The question we're continually being asked, I think, is the Morrison government on its way out? Well, personally, yes, and hopefully, yes, but will it eventually eventuate? Well, not too sure. We have to wait for an election next year, but are they looking good, or are they looking as if they have had the end of the tether and that they're about to collapse off the cliff and into the crushing waters below? Well, we don't know, but we certainly can say for sure that it looks like that may well be the case. Now, there's an interesting article by Paul Bongiorno in the New Daily about this, which I thought it'd be best to highlight and to let you know what I think, like as if you care. But if you do care, I'd like you to subscribe and ring the bell just to make me happy, if you wouldn't mind. So please do so. That'd be good. Now, the article just explains that there are quite a few things that have happened over recent times with regard to the Morrison government, and those collectively mean that, or indicate, I guess, that things aren't going well within the government sector. And I did hear today, not all that long ago actually, that Greg Hunt, who's our health minister and aged care minister, he's resigning from Parliament, so he's not going to be with us anymore, which is rather a shame, because I thought that if they had any leader at all who could obviously or probably take over for Morrison, would actually be Greg Hunt. But and I've got to be careful how I say that word, and I can't say it too quickly, otherwise he might get the wrong impression. But Greg is not a bad minister, I think, and he's sort of helped us to navigate our way through the coronavirus, and I find him quite believable, genuine, and so forth, whereas Morrison is just blatantly a liar. What can I say? And a deceitful man who doesn't give a crap about anybody. In fact, someone asked him a question in Parliament today. It was a woman from the opposition, and he had to make the point. So she was asking a question about the latest report into sexual assault and bullying in Parliament House. And he had to say to her, well, you've only been here for a short time. Completely unnecessary, but an effort to make a dig at her, probably because she's a woman and he's misogynist, and because he just had to have a shot at her. He couldn't just resist it. So, and the point is, it doesn't matter how long you've been. I haven't been in Parliament at all, and I know the place is stuffed, and we know that there's a lot of misogyny and bullying and harassment, sexual and otherwise, going on because people talk about it. And Brittany Higgins, to her credit, came out and had started to have this conversation about what's happening. And I wonder whether we would have ever had that conversation had it not been for Brittany coming out and talking about it. And 10 out of 10 for her. Wonderful woman. And I'm so glad that she's been able to do that. And also, so I'd like to just go through this particular article that's in the New Daily by Paul, a respected journalist, so let's respect him. He says, government like all, so the title is, Paul Bongiorno, the signs are the Morrison government is decaying before our eyes, a statement to which I agree. Governments, like all living organisms, suffer from physical entropy, so they've got to come to an end at some point. They have limited lifespan, and their end days are marked by a distinct decline in functionality. And we see that happening within the Morrison government right now. No doubt about that at all. Very few people would disagree, unless you're on Fox News, of course, because then you disagree with anything that comes from the left or is critical of the government. So I'm interested to know what Paul Murray and those guys have to say about this. It's not surprising, as the coalition about to enter its ninth year in office, 9 long, arduous years, I must confess. And the Morrison government is tired and it's running scared. And he says, I do not make this claim lightly, which means he must mean it, which is important to understand, because you wonder whether there are lots of statements that Paul might make that he doesn't really mean. We are seeing fractures in the government over vaccine mandates, religious discrimination, National Anti-Corruption Commission, but these aren't ordinary differences of opinion but these aren't ordinary differences of opinion within the confines of the party room. They are open defiance, and we've seen that in terms of people crossing the floor to vote with the other side. So there are in open defiance of the government's agenda on the floors of the parliament. We've seen this. There's a statement that they have lost faith in Scott Morrison's leadership and judgment to save the government at the looming election. And I think one of the interesting things is that you can see Morrison now becoming more and more isolated, if you like, more and more bullying, more and more antagonistic. And you can see now, even though it's a change in the chair, in the president of it's not the president, what is he in the lower house? It'll come to me in a moment. Speaker. So you see him become a little bit. The speaker has been changed. The dynamics, therefore, has changed from Tony Smith. But it does show that there's more unsettling, and that I think the Labor Party have a sense of that sense of being unsettled, and so they're stirring the pot even more, as I posted earlier with that post that Albanese called Dutton a buffhead. So if the cap fits, wear it. So I think that there's definitely this unraveling that I've observed, and I hope it continues to unravel as time goes by, because Morrison should not be the leader and Liberals should not be in power. Right, so he goes on to say, clearly some are spooked on the right by Clive Palmer's Uniting Australian Party and One Nation over vaccine mandates. And this is kind of like the issue I was talking about earlier, where I was saying that we need to be mindful of what's happening in the right, on the right, and we need to be mindful of what's happening in the right-wing media. And people like Clive Palmer and Craig Kelly and a few from the Liberal Party are feeding this right-wing propaganda to the point whereby they know that a lot of votes sit within that particular sector, and they're going to work hard in order to curry favour with those people so that they can get their votes. And in order to do so, even if you don't believe it yourself, you have to agree with them. So you turn up to rallies, you say stupid things, you do the anti-vaxxing thing, and then everybody pats you on the back, says you're doing fabulous, and they'll pick up their 20 or 30 votes, which might be enough to get them across the line, I don't know. But they are still a minority. That particular group of people are still a minority. Others are worried by the challenges over cashed-up progressive anti-independents running in the issue of climate change action and integrity in government. So there's this other side that we need to think about, where there's all these independents now that are running, and that climate change has become an issue which the Liberal Party just have ignored for years, and the Labor Party have in more recent times accepted, I guess, and it will become an issue within the election. It's generally accepted that the path to success is to walk moderate or centrist path, and there's a great deal of truth in that. But that line that used to sit between what we'd call the moderate or centrist has moved further to the right now, and so it's more likely that that the crazies, the nutters within the right wing of the Liberal Party and so forth, will have more power and influence. And then I think what's going to happen is that those people that sit further to the left or are progressive are still going to have a voice, and they're going to have to work hard to attract the people. So the people interested in climate change and other social issues in particular, they usually sit with the Labor Party, and the Labor Party will have to work hard in order to maintain those votes. He goes on to say, Liberals of a more moderate bent are despairing that Mr Morrison's capitulation to the hardline coal warriors in the Nationals over emissions targets has left them electorally exposed. And there's a lot of truth in that. You can't rely and should never have relied on corporations to big corporations like the coal industry in particular. You know, we even noticed that places like BHP now are selling off their coal their coal interests. They're going into renewables. I think they went into some gas, which is not quite a renewable, but are selling off their coal mines because they can see the writing on the wall. But if the Liberal Party fail to see that writing, they are doomed. And we know that in places like Yallourn and others where they're dependent upon coal, that there's a good opportunity for other investors to come in renewables and develop other industries around that will then employ those people that now currently work within the coal industry. So what else is he going to say? Here we go, just this last bit. But the darkest example of the Prime Minister's loss of confidence is in his own leadership authority is the withdrawing of the 349-page draft legislation for a National Integrity Commission. Now, there was an interesting section in Question Time today, so you kind of got to wonder what I do with my time on a Wednesday. Actually, Wednesday is my day off, hence the reason why I put out all these videos. But he held up this report today during Question Time and tabled it, which meant that it became an official document which the Liberal Party have not seen. And then Albanese gets up and says, well, okay, let's dispense with Question Time. Let's debate now the Integrity Commission proposal by the Liberal Party and the National Party, and of course that was squashed because it wasn't appropriate, I guess. But he was making the point that okay, you've now put it down, let's talk about it. And the other interesting thing is that there won't be any time to debate it because they've got, I think, is it just this week? I think, and then the party or next week. Anyway, soon. Sittings time finishes for the year, and next year up until about August they only have, because there's a planned election and a few other things, apparently they've only scheduled 10 days for Parliament. So the Integrity Commission is never going to get debated because then they'll have to form a commission, they'll have to form government inquiries, particularly in the Senate, to have a look at it and to get feedback on it and that sort of stuff, so the community can have a chance to look at it as well, because no one's seen it at this point apart from the friggin' Liberal Party. So this is another issue which needs to be dealt with, and I dealt with it. It's not going to be dealt with this year, that's for sure, and it's certainly not going to be dealt with next year. Anyway, they're my thoughts on what's happening to Morrison Government. There'll be more of those thoughts later on, I can assure you. Right, take care of yourself, everybody. Look after yourself, and more importantly, be safe.